Hello and good afternoon. I had a new one for this. Instead of ladybugs and yellow jackets, it was ladies and gentle thems. That's the new one that I've been practicing, you guys. Welcome to this week's episode of Author Reads here on Fae Productions. I am your host, Fairy Princess Lolly, and I am here with Joseph. Is it Malik or Malik?
Malik, thank you.
Malik, okay.
We're getting off to a fantastic start. I love this.
Okay.
You bulldozed right over that. That was great. Thank you.
Welcome to the show. And let me, if I can here, for those of you watching at home, before we jump into it, please, if you guys, wherever you're watching from, hit the like and subscribe and ring the bell if you would like to get notifications for future shows. And then I also want to give a shout out to today's show sponsor, which is Morbid Heart Designs. And Morbid Heart Designs is the Zodiac and horror themed art of Angela Williams, and it can be purchased as cards and vinyl stickers, which are awesome for your laptop, and prints and originals. Angela has spent this COVID summer adding a fantasy element to her product line, and by way of new digital coloring pages. So you can go over to her website. The information for that is in the low bar, and then also running in the ticker there, and see what she has available, which is actually quite a lot, but also check back on a weekly basis because she is always uploading new art for you to keep yourself entertained at home and color. Also, if you would like, you can please pop over to her Patreon or to her Twitch. Both of them are Patreon, Morbid Heart Designs, and Twitch, Morbid Heart Designs, and give her some support there if you find that you like her art. So she has been on the show for Handmade Home Shopping before, and we always love to support our artists. So thank you so much for that. And without further ado, Joseph, will you please introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, maybe give a shout out if you do local conventions to your home peeps. I don't know. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Malik. I am a fantasy author. I have 2 books out at this point, Dragon's Trail, which I'm going to read from today, and the sequel, The New Magic. I'm currently working on the 3rd. It should be out, I'm hoping this time next year. Run into some complications, and we'll get to those in just a minute after I tell you a little bit more about who I am, because I'll explain this a little more. I think if I jump into that right now, it's going to get really weird. So yeah, I'm a fantasy author. I am a soldier in the U.S. Special Operations Command. I currently teach advanced intelligence theory and asymmetric warfare analysis for them.
Wow. What is advanced intelligence theory? Is that like spy stuff?
Not really. It's more like, let me think about a way to say this. Basically, analytic theory, critical thinking. My team invents ways to solve problems in the intelligence field, looking at new kinds of emerging intelligence, and then using what we already know, building new processes to.
That sounds very fascinating.
It is fun. It's really, really fun. But in my early life, I trained as a stuntman. I was a high-rise window washer, played in the band for a while, did pretty much everything you can possibly think of. Had a really, really fun time. But all that time I was writing books, and I finally self-published Dragon's Trail back in 2016, and it has gone on to hit, I think, 50 or 60 bestseller lists. Wow. Now. It's been a Kindle bestseller in 4 countries. It's done really, really well. So you see mainstream critical acclaim. The sequel, The New Magic, wound up 25th on the Goodreads list for the Hugo in 2019.
Hey, that's pretty great.
It was really fun. Yeah, it was really fun. And I moderated at Worldcon last year. So I guess year before that, because we just did the virtual Worldcon. So in 2019 in Dublin, I was a moderator there. So it's been a wild ride. It has been absolutely it's been really, really fun. The 3rd book is hung up right now because of the work that I do. So they're fantasy spy thrillers. Right?
Okay.
And the 3rd book gets into some special operations type tradecraft. And so it has to go through a full declassification and pre-publication security review at the Defense Intelligence Agency before I can even so much as send it to
You mean actually in the really real world?
In the real world, yeah.
To make sure that you don't divulge anything that is too classified.
Yeah, I just found this out like a week ago, and I'm on the last. I have a terrible process. I won't get too much into it, but I write full drafts for each. I don't go back and do fiddly little edits. I write a full draft, and I do 3, 4, 5 full drafts all the way through, and then the last draft is the one that goes out. So they need to see the final draft, and that's yeah. I'm about halfway done with it, and
well, that's kind of a thing, though, that finishing the book, right? Because that's one of the things that many writers get stumped on, is that they never get to the end because they just edit and re-edit and re-edit and re-edit and never finish it. So
yeah, no, this works much better. Actually, I this started about 25 years ago, right out of college. I lost a manuscript in a hard drive crash, and I had to retype the entire thing off of a hard copy. Right, but I found as I went. I mean, we've probably all done this, right? But I found as I went that it was much better after I'd done it. I was like, man, this is way better. And then that's become my process. So I bang out multiple drafts, and each one is a little bit better than the last one. And when I finally get one that I can write all the way through without stopping and don't even have to tell myself what the jokes are and make sure I've got all the subplots and everything working the way they want to, when I can do that and write it all the way through, which is where I'm at with this one right now, then I know that it's ready to go out to my editor. Although now it's got to make a pit stop, and it's going to take 6 to 9 months, they're saying, for it to go through that review process. So I was aiming on getting it out next year. I've still got another 4 to 6 months of editing on top of that once I get it done. So it's probably going to be early 2022, and my agents.
Oh my gosh.
Me now. Yeah, I know.
That's stressful too, given everything that's 2 years away. Well, maybe like a year and a half, but
yeah, I know. And I really appreciate you doing this and letting me do this today, because I've kind of not so much fallen off the map, but I've been really digging into just kind of digging into my whole civilian life. And you're not going to believe this, but my commanding officer is actually calling me right now. I'm just going to have to let that. Can I put you on mute for like 30 seconds? I'm really sorry. Seriously.
Yes, there's fires everywhere. Please answer it.
I'm sorry. Hang on one second.
Yep. No, that's totally fine. Wow. I think this might actually be the first time we've literally had like a real spy person writing a book about fantasy spying things on the show with us. This is kind of super cool and unprecedented, actually. So he's taking a call right now from his commanding officer, for those of you who might have just popped in, because there are fires burning all over the Northwest, and we are both here in the Northwest, and everything is filled with
probably fine.
Okay. It's probably fine. Yeah,
it's all right.
It's going crazy out there, and I don't know, we have more than one friends who are in or on the verge of evac areas, and it's bad. So
that's terrible. It's
yeah.
Terrible. Even outside, the smoke outside is just crazy. It's supposed to be worse this afternoon. I guess what happened was, as I understand it, all the smoke that missed us sort of floated north and west of us, and now the wind just shifted and it's all blowing in from off the ocean. So we're going to get hammered with this stuff over the next couple of days. So
well, for the last couple of days, I haven't been able to smell it inside. I can only see it and smell it when I go outside. But this morning I woke up and, we could smell it inside, and it's just not good. So,
well, I let my dog out this morning. I let the dog out. The dog stops at the front door and just starts barking. And just, hey, this is not right. Something's wrong. Hey, dude, something's wrong. Hey, Dad, can you come look at this for a second?
Something's out here. I don't know what it is, but
it's wrong. It's wrong. Above my pay grade.
I was thinking while you were talking about how you have to have this book go through this. I've never even heard of something like this, but it just reminds me of how when you always see those declassified documents that have the strike through. You know, I assume that part's still classified when they do that, but you know, but when they strike through it, I'm like, you know, maybe you can print it.
Hilarious. I'm hoping that there's something in there, kind of. I'm hoping that I can just strike through it as I go. I don't think I'd be allowed. I don't think I'd be allowed.
Just like, this can't be in here, you know. But the thing that I was thinking was like, how maybe you can turn that to your advantage, right? By putting tidbits of the book that's to come out there as if they are like, as if the story is being slowly declassified, right? And so it's only coming in bits and pieces, and let people actually look at the draft that's got the strike through.
Well, actually, one of the funny things about this was I had some early ride or die readers. So, okay, let me back this up a little bit. So, because I did, you know, I did stunt work and I used to box, and I've studied swordsmanship, and I've done stunts on horseback, and I consider myself a method writer. So my running joke is that I do all my characters' stunts.
Like a method actor, but yeah.
Exactly. And it's easier for me. I don't consider myself a terribly imaginative person, so it was easier for me to go out and do this stuff for myself and take notes than it would have been to imagine what it would have been like. So fast forward after 15, 20 years of doing all my character stunts, and I write these intensely technical novels, fantasy novels that are written at like techno-thriller levels of detail. And I had, when you couple that with my bio, I had some early readers who seemed to take very seriously the idea that my job in special operations had something to do with being part of some kind of black ops program that actually does this sort of stuff. So I thought that was really kind of fun. And you know, I gave them a lot of like, you know, I can either confirm or deny sorts of things early on. And I demonstrate this stuff at fantasy conventions. So I'll demonstrate swordsmanship and hand-to-hand combat and military tactics and strategy and these kinds of things at cons. And that's how I built my early my early following. So this book, the third book, actually involves a special operations mission that discovers the world in these books and starts getting that involved in it. So it's going to be really, really fun. I'm having a great time with it, but I've crossed into some territory that I have to be absolutely sure about certain parts of not just tradecraft, but also just like the ability of some of our equipment to do the things that it can do. You have to make sure that none of that's crossing any kind of classified territory. So it'll be really fun. And I'm hoping that some of those early readers are still around. It's been a few years, but I'm hoping this will kind of wake them back up because they were really fun. They were a fun crew. So
can I just ask a quick question before we get started with the reading? I don't know, it might have something to do because you might have worked it into a book somewhere, but what do you think is the most dangerous crazy stunt that you ever did as a stunt person?
I studied high falls for a while. And yeah, that can get really hairy. You have to do everything exactly correct every single time. I mean, down to the inch of your body positioning. And so that was yeah. As far as the actual research goes, there are a couple of things. Boy, I'm trying to think of if I had to pick one. I did a tandem base jump.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
It was really cool, except when the guy was explaining to me how this works, a base jumping rig is basically a reserve chute. And since you're jumping from, 600, 700 feet, there's no time to pull a reserve anyway. So you get one chance with this thing. If the chute doesn't open, the guy literally like, what happens if the chute doesn't open? And the guy says, then you spend the rest of your life trying to get it open.
Yeah.
That's literally what he said. I'm like, this is...
What's a very Ron White style of answer, by the way?
Really.
Like, if one engine goes out, how far will the other one get us? Well, all the way to the side of the crash.
That's exactly the kind of answer this guy gave me. And I'm like, I'm going to go to the bar and then I'm going to come back. There's a bar up the road, and I'm gonna go get drunk, and then we're gonna do this.
Liquid fortification.
Oh yeah, but I've got all the notes, and my main character in this series, it's a Portal fantasy series, and the main character is a stuntman who works on fantasy films. So again, I got to use a lot of the stunt training that I had to do this. And spoiler, but there's a scene where he rescues somebody. There's a tower escape, and he uses a tandem base jumping rig to jump off of a castle that's at the top of a cliff. And I pulled all of that stuff from my notes, like right down to the guy's description of the rig and about how it's got, it has, oversized cord-wise vents for fast pressurization at low speeds and all of this stuff. And it's a larger canopy than normal, and it hits really hard. And then, like when the chute opened up, my head went back and smacked him in the helmet. If we both hadn't been wearing helmets, I'd have knocked him right out. And just all these things you just don't think about. If I had written that scene and made it up, it would miss details. Yeah, the guy, shaking out the extra cord from the pilot chute before he jumps off the thing, and when we're standing on the edge of the cliff and I move just wrong and he hits me in the helmet and says, "Stop moving." I was like, okay, great. That could have gone. Yeah, I don't even know there was this. Okay, yeah, it was dangerous, but the guy knew what he was doing, and that's great. But I will never do that again.
Listen,
is just insanely tight. So yeah, it's just not. I don't like that.
As experienced as some people may be, you're still quote unquote jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, as it were, right? Like, I mean,
no business jumping off of. No reason to do it. It's just.
I mean, you can have experience, but still.
Yeah. Again, I wish I was more creative. I do. I wish I was a more imaginative author. I'd have a lot fewer broken bones and a lot fewer scars. So.
Well, glory is forever. So.
Amen. Yeah, chick takes scars. So. Yeah.
That they say. All right. Well, what book will you be reading to us from today?
I'm sorry?
What book will you be reading to us from today?
I'm going to be reading. Wow. I'm going to try to read to you from Dragon's Trail, but man, it is smoky as hell. So my little office here is built behind my garage, kind of built into the back of the garage. So, and apparently it's not sealed as well as I thought it was because it's getting. It's probably fine.
Well, if you have to pause to take a drink, feel free to do that. There's, everybody understands, right?
Yeah, I shouldn't be
forever. So
have you. I'll be reading to you from Dragon's Trail, and I'm going to jump in a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit forward in the book. Not much. I don't even know.
I'm going to turn the screen.
We're 30 pages in. So what? Go ahead.
I'm going to turn the screen over to you so you can talk to folks, and I will be in the audience for those of you watching at home. If you guys have questions that you would like to ask, please type them into the comments, and then we will go through the questions when Joseph is done reading today. And so now I'm going to give you the whole screen, and you can talk away.
You can see all the cool stuff on my walls. Yeah, neat, right?
It is rather cool, actually. It's very precisely neat and organized, exactly the opposite of my walls.
I wonder if I can turn this around. Hang on one second. Just while we're here, hang on a minute. Because the rest of this room is actually kind of cool. Let's see. I've got some promo stuff, but then over here, so I've got more swords.
Cool.
And I've got tomahawk.
I should say thank you for your service, too. I forgot to say.
Oh, yeah. Hey, no worries. Thank you for paying your taxes.
Hey, I like paying my taxes. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, I got a little fireplace over there and more swords and this really cool kind of stick staff thing that I found when I was out hiking that still has moss growing in the top of it. So I'm keeping that. And then those are my foils from college, and then my research library, and that's my decoder ring from SFWA, the Science Fiction Writers of America. And what else?
And you know how to wield all of these weapons.
Oh, yeah. I demonstrate this stuff at fantasy conventions around the country. Yeah. And then this is a map of my fantasy world that we blew up and framed. And I sell these at conventions and signings as well. So they're really fun. And then more swords and army things. And
did you do your own cartography?
I'm sorry?
Did you do your own cartography on the map?
I didn't. My wife did because she's the brains of the outfit. All I really do is lift heavy things. No, she's so much more artistic than I am. So yeah, I drew it. Basically, I drew out a rough sketch of everything, and well, it's really rough because I've been doing it. I've been writing books set in this world for about 15 years before I finally published one of them. And they all went to major publishers, and then they who passed on them, except for the last one. Interestingly, the book that became Dragon's Trail, a publisher held it for almost 2 years, asking me for a series treatment for like 5 books. And then they finally passed, and then I did a rewrite on that, and that became Dragon's Trail. But so I'd had like 15 years to build this world and have the maps figured out on my own. But the actual final piece of it, my wife drew it out using cartographic software.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she did a phenomenal job. It's just an absolutely beautiful thing. Yeah,
got a good team thing going here.
Yeah, and the team is a big thing too. I mean, being a self-published author doesn't necessarily mean being a do-it-yourselfer. I have editing staff. I have, I've got marketing. I've got a marketing team. I've got somebody helping with web design. I've got people to advise me on branded artwork. I've got, all the way across, accountants, lawyers. There's stuff that I just can't do on my own. And so that's another part of the whole process. And then editors and proofreaders and all of that. So I hire out all that stuff. Because again, I take a lot of blows to the head, so I don't think I'm necessarily the best person to be doing all of that. Okay, so we're jumping into Dragon's Trail. We're about 30 pages in. The main character, his name is Jared, and he and his friend Carter Jared just got in a fight and he was knocked unconscious, and he has just woken up he's about to wake up in a fantasy world, and there's a wizard named Creus who has already recruited his friend Carter. Jared doesn't know this yet. So Jared's going to wake up, find Carter, meet Creus, and then that's going to set up pretty much the entire thing and give you, this is basically I hate to call it an info dump, but this basically sets up the premise for the entire series here in about 10, 15 minutes. So that's where we're going. Everybody cool? All right. So, okay. Chapter 2, Minuet. Never give a sword to a man who can't dance. Confucius. Jared awoke to a chill. He smelled candle smoke with an underpinning of wet concrete and cedar. A basement smell, a woodshop smell, distant incense. It was cold. Swearing silently through a yawn, he opened his eyes. A turn of his head yielded surprisingly less discomfort than he'd expected. Jared looked up into the candlelit crags of a face, stubbly, the lines ingrained with concern. It took him a moment. It was a face he recognized, but certainly not one he'd expected. Carter's face. You awake? The voice seemed to see from all corners of the room. Excuse me again. Jared closed his eyes again and tried to speak. Someone had stolen his tongue and replaced it with a hunk of steel wool. Carter handed him a ceramic chalice of cold water. Jared sat up a bit and nursed it. The room was generous, lit by wide candles and stone sconces, and done in early, very early, he noted, medieval decor. Rough stone walls, bare timbers overhead, and a stack of split fat logs and a pile of dried cow flop beside a glowing fireplace. A wooden floor that looked splintery. A wolf skin spread-eagled on the wall, replete with dried, eyeless head. Rustic and simple, yet somehow rich. Beams and boards were well cared for. The bed sheets were soft, and the furs covering him were real and thick. The lone tapestry, green with a gold skeleton key superimposed along a white square tower in its center, was fine silk, heavy and bright, that seemed to glow of its own accord. It was quiet. Wind rustled the skin on the wall. The fire snapped occasionally. If he concentrated, he could hear the burbling of a brook over stones. "You all right?" asked Carter. Jared tried to sit up further, and Carter helped him. "Good Lord," Jared groaned, stretching with great effort and owling repeatedly under his breath. "How long was I out?" "Days, weeks, no bed sores." "Beats me," said Carter. "You were out when I got here." He yawned again. "How long have you been here?" Carter sipped at a ceramic stein of something foamy he'd had near his feet. 3 days. Jared stretched his neck and leaned forward to grab his toes beneath the furs. His flexibility wasn't greatly compromised. He'd been well taken care of. "Bastard Ronaldo," he griped. "Beat the shit out of me. Could have sworn he collapsed my windpipe. Did they cut me?" He reached his hand to his throat, expecting bandages, finding none. Carter's tone was resigned. "I don't know." "Where's Siri?" Siri is she'll cover that. Siri is a girl that Jared and Ronaldo were fighting over earlier. "I don't know. Not here. We got to find her. Ronaldo." Carter cut him off. "Forget Ronaldo. This is you and me." "Okay." Jared blew out a long breath. "Where are we?" Carter stood, went to the far wall, untied one leg of the wolfskin, and pulled it back to reveal a deep arrow slit set in a stone wall 2 feet thick. Jared moved to the edge of the bed for a better look. It was raining lightly against the outermost lip of the arrow slit, smudging any details of the curtain wall 100 yards further and 100 feet below. They were very high in the tower. Past the curtain wall, the skies were dark with rain above 100 wooden roofs that sprawled down the hillside, oozing smoke from their chimneys. The outer wall of the town stood at the base of the hill, its towers, vaguely round, reduced to blurs in the mist. The quiet was infectious, the rain a blanket on the world. "Wow." "The castle of Regather," said Carter. "Northern Gates Keep." "Do we have cell service out here?" "I doubt it." "Help me up." "Wow, it's cold." Carter handed Jared a folded black shirt from the end of the bed and helped him to his feet. It was then that Jared noted Carter's outfit, which consisted of a gray cable knit sweater with laces at the neck, a black cape trimmed with dense silver fur he couldn't immediately identify, molasses-colored trousers that appeared to be suede, hand-stitched and stiff, and fine knee boots that laced up the front. The tops turned out to show a silver fur lining that matched his cape. Atop the sweater peeked the stiff embroidered collar of a black undertunic that looked to be either velvet or heavy silk. Quite expensive, he guessed. He hadn't given the getup much thought at first because every time he'd seen Carter had been at a Renaissance fair, guild event, or movie set. He was acclimated to seeing Carter dressed like he'd just stepped out of formation with Hengist and Horsa. Perhaps most intriguingly, over the sweater, Carter wore a sword and matching dagger and an authentic baldric, the sword scabbard in the silver embossed frog that matched the piping on his collar. The frog, essentially a sheath for a sheath, was one of the telling signs that an actor, reenactor, or consultant knew what the hell he or she was doing. Excuse me again. A scabbard tucked under a belt holds a sword handle at an awkward angle and renders it nearly impossible to draw. A proper frog is adjustable and angles the weapon's handle forward exactly at hand height. It was a small detail, and Jared was the details guy. Jared was the details guy. He stood with some effort. He was disoriented and hungry, but he felt strong, all things considered, and pulled on the long shirt over the undertunic. The long shirt was black and either rough silk or soft hemp, and several sizes too large. It sported the same embroidered silver collar as Carter's undershirt. He began rolling up the sleeves from his fingertips. Nice sword. The sword was wide, and he could tell it was heavy even in the scabbard, maybe 30 inches of blade, with just enough leather-wrapped handle for 2 hands. Okay, let's see. Where'd you get that? Carter grinned an unstable grin. You wouldn't believe it, man. We are through the looking glass. How so? Carter leaned against the wall, and Jared rubbed his muscles all over, partially to limber up, partially to warm himself. The more he moved, the less he hurt. The giant sipped at his beer. Welcome to Gatescape. Carter is very, very tall. He played professional football and then went into the SCA Renaissance thing and now teaches great sword. We'll get there. As far the giant sipped at his beer. Welcome to Gateskeep. What the hell is Gateskeep? Jared asked, not kindly. A bunch of Burning Man rejects have built a feudal-era commune in northern Maine. They'll probably make me king. As far as I can tell, it's the northwestern country of a small continent. They call this their world, but the map I've seen looks like a continent. We're in the castle of Regothar, a short ride from the northern sea and a half-day's ride from the palace to hear them tell it. Jared stared at Carter from hands on knees and caught a pair of woolen trousers, coarse and gray, as they were tossed to him. Pump your brakes. Start again. Carter's voice was inattentive. I don't know. It's another world. I don't know how. Maybe you'll get it. Another world, huh? Wow, these are scratchy. Jared commented, turning the trousers over. And long. Good Lord. Are there any breeches or hose over there? Carter tossed him a set of silk breeches. Candy ass. Yeah. I need a belt. Carter rifled through the pile of clothes and tossed him a padded leather belt. The tooling was intricate. The clasp silver, the lining velvet, and the best Jared could figure it looked expensive. It all did. He cast a sidelong, wary glance out the window as he cinched the pants tight. There were no belt loops, but a braided rawhide drawstring. He tied the strings and secured the belt around his waist and rolled up the cuffs. So I have to ask, he started. Go ahead, said Carter. Jared slowed in his motions as he tucked and buckled the belt over the tunic. Is this a reality show? Not as far as I know. Yeah, bullshit. No bullshit. Bull, Jared repeated. Shit. The word sounded strange off his tongue. Hey, look, I'm sorry, but what I'm told is that there's another Earthling here. I don't know. As Carter's voice roved on, something tugged at the edges of Jared's perception, the shimmer of reality that signals the ruin of the dream of a lifetime. I don't understand a lot of it, but he's on their side. The other side. There's a war, or there's going to be. They're asking for our enlistment. In a reality show? No. Seriously, because I've got lawyers, Carter, good ones. Jared, warned Carter. Okay, fine, enlistment. What did you say? I said, hell yes. Jared rubbed the bedpost with his thumb. If you accepted, then there's got to be more. Carter wasn't stupid. And there was the nagging ache again. The more Carter spoke, the more things seemed to shimmer. There's a lot more. They'll explain. But look, would I miss this for anything? I'm 43 years old and I still have roommates. They're paying us for this, said Carter. How much? A lot. And they're paying in gold. Jared drummed his fingers. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Amy's long gone. I didn't know that, Jared interrupted. I'm sorry. It's fine, but I have nothing going on. Me, you, this, why not? Let's see. I want to see how are we doing for time here?
It is at 2:37. So you could probably get away with another 10 minutes.
Great. Okay. So let's skip forward just a little bit. Okay. Carter's smile was infectious. Oh, man, sign me up, Jared begged. Sign yourself up. Here. Carter handed Jared a pair of boots. They were his own. Jared was thankful that someone had taken the care to bring not only his blade, but his boots, which were sturdy, leather, and Gore-Tex hikers. There was a practicality to the choice, a horse sense that, to Jared, resonated with a medieval mindset and further cemented the reality he was finding around him. Come on, said Carter, I'm starving. Yeah, me too. He rolled the worlds up. He rolled. Wow, that's hard to say. Why did I write that? Okay. Yeah, me too. He rolled the words off his tongue. Me too. Me too. It jarred Jared like few things ever had. A revelation that slammed him on the head, nearly hard enough to knock his fillings out. The room spun. Carter steadied him. You okay? Jared stammered with a few awkward phrases, quietly at first. What he was hearing in his skull were clicks and pops and nasal alien vowels. His tongue was doing backflips in his head. Jared, Carter asked again, looking into his eyes with concern. You okay? Jared shook his head, tangled hair falling from his hands in incomprehension. Carter. Yes? Only it wasn't yes. Not quite. A terse word, an acknowledgement. But what Jared heard was sure as hell not yes. We're not speaking English. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit here. Excuse me for 1 second. This air is killing me. Hang on 1 second.
I know, it's really bad.
Oh, it is really bad. I'm sorry. Hang on 1 second.
It's okay. Take a drink
I'll be
and
right back.
rest your throat for a second. All right. Joseph will be back with us momentarily. He is actually just going to get a drink because the smoke here in the Northwest where we're at, I'll bring myself back on. I'm so sorry, guys. The smoke here in the Northwest is really bad. It's been pretty bad for the last several days. But he is in an area that is pretty close to some of the wildfires. So, and even where I am at in this safe area. So he should be back here shortly. Now, just so you guys know, when he is done reading, we will take the questions from the audience and he will answer those. And then after that, we will be having a drawing. We have a couple of things, actually. We'll be having a drawing for a free copy of his book, which will be your pick. You can either choose to have an ebook or a physical copy, depending on what you're most comfortable with. And then for those of you who are on our Patreon, we are going to have some special patron-only content. So for as little as $1 a month, you too can have access to that patron-only content. And also, though, if you are on our Patreon, you will get an automatic entry into today's drawing. And then we will also take your names in the comments when it comes that time. So stick around because we only have a few more minutes to go. Really, he's going to read a little bit more, and then it will be question and drawing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the
welcome back, Joseph.
All right, so now they're going to meet the wizard.
Yep, no problem.
So Carter pushed open the door. Jared, this is Master Creus Lodovagus, High Sorcerer of Gateskeep. Creus stood behind his desk and threw up the rock sign with grave formality. This is something that Carter had taught him earlier on. Carter first saw him and was like, dude! And so now every time the wizard sees him, he does this. And you'll see this more and more and more in as the books go. Anyway, moving on. Dude, he announced sagely. Roll with it, Carter advised before Jared could even turn to ask. Jared shook his head with a disbelieving smile. We've met. He dropped to one knee with a flourish. Sir, I owe you an apology for my rudeness and a tremendous debt for my life. Please be seated. Are you well? Thank you, sir, said Jared, sitting in a chair before Creus's desk. I'm very well. Whoever healed me did fine work. Jared Torialde. Creus knew his last name, and Jared could only assume he'd been speaking with Carter at length. Lord of Knightsbridge, Jared decided. Knightsbridge was the name of his family estate in Connecticut. My father would be Lord of Knightsbridge. Jared, son Lord Knightsbridge. Suddenly, irresponsibly, overwhelmingly, Jared wanted this gig. He longed to tell Creus of his schooling at the Académie d'Espée, Paris, at the Royal College of Arms in Cambridge, and of his Junior World Cup saber title and his black belt in judo. But he knew he wouldn't have to. The job was his. All his qualifications would come through revelation as he moved across his Disneyland like a hurricane. What we have, why you're here, Creus began, slouching back in his chair, is a result of a most unfortunate turn of events. Unfortunate for our kingdom, mind you, not necessarily for you. We are the kingdom of Gateskeep. How much has the Chancellor, Carter, told you? Not a lot. Jared wanted the whole damn thing to buttress Carter's claims. How far back can you begin? The sorcerer bit his lip in thought, scooted his chair around, leaned forward a bit, and sighed. Long ago, a race of beings, we called them the demons, came to us. They had done what we had never done, what we had never allowed ourselves. They developed from our water wheels and fires what came to be known as the new magic. They knew, or claimed to have learned, why trees grow, why fires burn. They could create fire, any of them, with tools they all carried. They had tools to kill, tools for maps, tools for mounts, tools for light, not unlike what I've seen of your world. The danger we realized from the inception of our allegiance with the demons was that of power without discipline. Any fool among them could create fire, the most dangerous element in existence. Similarly, any madman of their ranks could kill effortlessly. They'd cast out their gods and taken their salvation into their own hands. This was the new magic, the demon's way. Here we train our strongest minds to bend the will of the universe. We become the sorcerers and the healers. Understand there's a tremendous amount of discipline a sorcerer must undergo. To inflict harm, to create malignancy in any form is forbidden and schooled out through the rigors of instruction. Jared found his mouth dry. A war erupted over the importance of the demon's way. So great was this war that the demons themselves finally stepped in to make amends, those of us favoring a life of technology for their descendants to be trained in the new magic, but to be taken to your world, our sister world. Jared took the moment of quiet to poke the anthill. Earth, right? Is that why we speak your language? The sorcerer smiled. Our language was taught to you by our particularly gifted sorcerer, a telepath, while you rested. The same guy's tutoring me, Jared, interrupted Carter. You wouldn't believe how fast you can pick up a language when your teacher's telepathic. I'm going to skip down to the large point here. Hang on a second. We are running out of time. Okay. How are we doing?
It's okay. Just so you know, it's 2:45, but it's not as if we're going to turn into pumpkins at 3:00 on the dot. So.
Well, hey, okay. In that case, all right. South of the Shield Lands is Gavria, our southern neighbor. Most of Gavria has mountains and arid lands. Gavria has mines, so they trade with us. Gold, iron, salt. Jared interjected, iron and gold? Dear God, what's their military like? Krias nodded slowly. Their armies are vast. Professional, armed clear down to their balls. We've been fearing war, more so now with the spate of recent developments. And these new developments involve us. They do. Jared felt like interlacing his fingers behind his head and kicking his feet up on the desk, but refrained. Let's have it. There's been a recent appointment to the Gavrian Parliament. He's one of yours. Mine? From Earth, said Carter. Yes, agreed Krias, and blood son of one of the most black-souled malefactors to ever walk this world. Jared gave that what he deemed an appropriate span of respectful silence. I, he said with quiet and deliberation, am going to want every last detail. 400 years ago, his father, a sorcerer of tremendous power, seized the throne of Gavria. He's still renowned as the most powerful sorcerer who's ever lived. He didn't hold the throne long. He and his entire family, wives, children, were put to death. Gavria wanted an end to the bloodline. Gavrian forces tore his palace down, and his lands fell to ruin, swallowed by the Eastern Freehold. Legend has it, and we now know it to be true, that one wife bearing an unborn son escaped to your world with much of the family fortune. She wasn't pursued, for your world is in the psychic backwaters of the universe, and the forces of magic don't flow easily there. 400 years ago. For us, far shorter, we fear, for your world. The dread son is of Carter's approximate age. A native of your country, of the metropolis of, wait, New York, yes? New York, Jared confirmed. The word was a spear of daylight. So what then? She learned English, got a J job, sent her to parochial school? Come on. Carter shrugged. Hey, it's been known to happen. Land of opportunity. Jared put his head in his hands. And he's from New York. Tell me he's no one I know. I can't answer that, said Krias. We do know that he has returned to his father's lands as of 12 years ago, and he's proven most enterprising. He built a magnificent palace on the ruins of the last, and has amassed a considerable fortune. He's quite brilliant in the ways of commerce. Most of us are, Jared admitted, omitting compared to you, I'm sure. His new country is Ulorak. Krias tapped the map, showing a high country ringed with mountains in the northeast corner of Gavria. They declared themselves sovereign from the Eastern Freehold some years back. He is King Sabagian the Silver. King, grumbled Jared, and sorcerer. He would have possessed limited powers in your world, but his magic would be amplified 100 times here. By all reports, he's many times the sorcerer I am. Jared looked back at Carter. Oh, that's great. Anything else? Ulorak has recently become a Gavrian protectorate, and King Sabagian is now Lord Sabagian, High Sorcerer of Gavria. Gavria, said Jared, your neighbor who you think is preparing for war, the guys with all the iron and gold. And with the appointment comes a seat on the Gavrian War Council. Jared shifted in his seat. Princesses, monsters, rising armies, exiled sons of evil sorcerers returning to claim dark thrones. And you want us to what? Stop him? Kill him? It didn't sound as convincing as he hoped it would. So the setup here is that we've got two guys who are medieval weapons experts. One's a stuntman, the other is a medieval historian and weapons man, who are sent over into this fantasy world to counter this sorcerer who is then the sorcerer they're sent to counter turns out to be this trope of the lost prince who was raised on Earth, and then when he grew up, he found out that he was secretly magical and the son of a sorcerer, and he won back his father's kingdom, and he came of age in a world of magic and wonder and all these things. And then 12 years on, he has become such a raging prick about it that the neighboring kingdom has gone back and hired you guys to kill him. So that's the setup for the series. What's
the quote about power? Power corrupts.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You bet. Absolutely.
There you go.
And in the prequel, one of the first books that I wrote and could never really make work, and when I finish this book, I'm going to start the prequel on this, which is going to be that sorcerer's origin story. And
cool.
He was a Las Vegas illusionist who could do the magic tricks for real, right? So one of these Chris Angel types, but could actually do the magic. So nobody else could figure out how he was doing these things, and he eventually, and he eventually gets basically run out of town by the other magicians because he won't tell them his secrets, and they can't figure it out. And he goes through this whole thing and becomes a fraud, and then he gets super drunk, and at the same time that he's getting loaded, these kids are in his old world are playing around with a summoning ritual, and he passes out drunk in an alley and wakes up in this fantasy world, and it goes from there. Well,
we do have some questions from the audience if you are ready for those.
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely.
All right. Let me get back here towards scrolling up for a second.
Yeah.
So let's see. We have this one here from William Joseph Roberts, which is, who's the biggest influence on your style?
Oh, wow. I guess we'll have to define style. I don't want to make this one too long, but
you said it earlier. You were method fantasy.
Yeah, I'm a method writer. As far as that goes, I don't know anybody who's actually done that, not to that extent. So that's kind of new. But stylistically, I like Tom Clancy and I like Michael Crichton. And I actually read far more military thrillers and techno thrillers than I do fantasy. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do this way was that I wanted to read a fantasy novel that had that kind of technical detail to it. So as far as like the expository narration and the technical details and that kind of thing, I definitely lean quite a bit on Clancy and Crichton. I think the book that I've read the most in my life is would probably have to be Shogun by James Clavell, which is also a fish out of water story. It's not exactly a portal fantasy, but it's definitely a portal story. It's about an English pilot who, an English sailor who ends up shipwrecked in Japan, and has to adjust to this whole new culture and has this whole sort of going native kind of feel to it. And there's a lot of, and I hadn't read Shogun until I started working on actually the second series, which I'm also writing like three things at the same time right now. But when I started working on that second series, I started bouncing back to Shogun, and I realized how much of that is in my voice right now. And I didn't even realize that because I haven't read it since I was probably in my 20s, but I bet I read it 10 times growing up. So, yeah.
Well, like they say, write what you want to read, right? And
absolutely. No, it's absolutely right. No, if there's a book out there that you want to read and it doesn't exist, that's the universe.
Time for you to write it.
It's your responsibility. That's what we do. So,
well, you simultaneously answered two questions actually with that answer. So let's see. Here is one from Newton File. I am curious if these misplaced characters attempt to bring some modernity to the adventures they find themselves in this fantasy world.
absolutely, yes. Yes, they do. So yes, they. So Carter brings a set of modern armor that he had built for himself. That's basically built out of the same kind of steel that they use for industrial bearings, and which is far beyond anything that they can do in that world. And they also bring modern high-speed steel weapons. And so what makes a techno thriller work is that the plot points have to turn on technical details. And the reason that that's important is that the major technical detail in Dragon's Trail is the way that they make their steel. And they make it out of iron and charcoal, and it has to be hand forged and hand rolled and all this stuff. So they don't make the caliber and quality of steel that we have here. And steel in the world is super expensive and really not that good. So these guys bring modern high-speed steel weapons and armor.
But this is going to be basically like in the old, bronze iron age where because of its superior craftsmanship and the metal used, it basically will seem as if it's almost a magical weapon of its own, because it will just utterly slice through and crush opponents.
Yes, exactly. And I wrote their arcs very much as superhero type atonement arcs. And so the more that they do with these weapons and armor, the deeper trouble they get into. And so they keep causing more and more and more and more problems. And then finally, by the end of the second book, they've caused a full-on technological disaster. And they have to spend the third book fixing it. So, yeah.
With great power.
Roger that. And they don't see that they've done any of this. The main character spends the first book just kind of having a great time doing it. And there are wonderful comparisons that I've gotten to the first book reading, sort of like if Deadpool was dropped into Game of Thrones, because he just kind of crotch punches his way across this grim, dark universe and doesn't think too much about it. And he starts to see the repercussions of that in the second book. And then by the end of the second book, they realize just how much damage they've done. So yeah, they absolutely do. And that's that new technology that they put into that they bring over to the fantasy world is what drives the entire series. In fact, that's going to drive not just this series, but the follow-on series as well.
It gives me a kind of a reminiscent feel of Skynet from Terminator, where they find a piece of technology, not from that realm or that time, and that ends up having, catastrophic effects down the line, because people are like, well, what is this? And then they go off on their own, exploring to figure it out. And, everybody knows that movie. So, but that's kind of the effect, like the same butterfly effect, right? They bring this.
And they also, and it's not just the steel making, that's where it starts, but also the way that we make war, the way that we actually do things, our laws of war, our military tactics, our training, nutrition, all the things that we do, the things that make our soldiers today these amazing physical specimens that they are, compared to what somebody was in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
So I mean, you look at like our professional fighters, our MMA fighters, that kind of thing, and just what they would have appeared to be magical beings to somebody back in the Middle Ages, by all intent, for all intents and purposes. So that's so yeah, all those things they introduce, because the main character gets a gig in an order of knights that travels around from castle to castle training other knights, and they're just like, oh my God, who is this guy? Holy crap, how did he do that? Wow, where did that come from? Oh my God, he can do this, he can do that.
Can I ask a question that kind of builds on this a little bit? Yeah. So I'm not any kind of a military history expert, but my rudimentary understanding is that back in the Middle Ages, they didn't really do things like guerrilla warfare. or the types of things that we would have seen in like Afghanistan or Vietnam. Like that was not, everybody brought their armies and they all fought each other face to face, in these big battles. There wasn't a lot of, camouflage and sneaking around and all of, like you were saying. So I'm curious, do you base any of the battles that are in your books or the combats off of historically famous combats? And if so, which ones?
Not exactly. When Ulo wins back his father's kingdom, it's told in backstory. He does a thing that replicates a battle that there was a Bulgar warlord named Krum the Horrible, who, he was amazing.
The name is so big.
Incredible, right? No, he waited for, I think it was the forces of Constantinople, but he waited for them at the top of a hill in the middle of a rainstorm. He just had his guys waiting at the top of this hill. And these knights had to come up the hill in their armor in this knee-deep mud.
I'm like, that's terrible lowdown.
By the time they got up there, they were so tired. They were just physically shot. And then Crum's guys were like, all right. And it was nothing. It was at the point where the people in that area of the world were using the bones left over from that slaughter to like build their fences and their houses. It was that. It was insane. Yeah. So I used like some of that, for instance. But one of the things that they do in this world, they have a very, very low population. Their reproductive rates are super slow. They have a 440-day year. So the lunar cycle, the growth cycle for everything, fertility cycles, everything are 104 days instead of 28. So everything moves really slowly. They don't have much population. Because of that, they can't mass giant armies the way that we do. They also don't do massive, they generally don't do battles to the death either. If you have a border skirmish, it might be a dozen knights on each side and they may beat each other up. And then the losers ride off, waving, okay, got it. Sorry, won't do that again. It also touches on how hard it is to actually kill somebody who's in armor. You have to kind of beat them up until they stop fighting. It's really, really hard to kill somebody in armor. And you have to really want to. You basically have to knock them unconscious or disable them and then kill them. And they generally don't do that. So once again, they find that that's another thing that these characters, as more and more people from Earth get involved as the series goes along, changes the way they make war. And so, and the third book is going to have this. The third book builds into this enormous, several thousand person battle on this giant field. It's just the kind of thing that we see in epic fantasy all the time, and they have never seen in their lifetimes. And it's just something that we brought because that's the way that we do things. So, yeah.
So can I ask one more question before I saw your website, and then after this we'll go to the drawing. So I saw on your website there was this it says seamlessly blending hard science with epic fantasy, and so the hard science part, if that is not your personal background in hard science, how do you get that? How do you get that expertise?
I buy people a lot of beer, and you would be amazed what you can get out of somebody who knows something when you sit down with a pitcher of beer and a couple of plates of wings and you start taking notes. If I don't know how something works, I'll go talk to somebody who does. If I can't do it myself, if it's something I can't learn for myself, if it's an actual skill, something I'll never master to that degree. That's basically it. All right. One of my favorite things is the saddles for the Pegasi in this series.
As in flying horses.
Flying horses.
Okay.
So we had to come up with a saddle for a flying horse and figure out how to put somebody on a horse when the legs are in the way, or the wings are in the way of your legs, right? Mm-hmm. And not only that, right, if you're belted to the saddle, right, how do you stay on, right? And then how do you control a horse because you control a horse with pressure from your legs in one direction or another. But if you're flying and you're moving in three dimensions, right?
Yes.
Then you may just be trying to right yourself on the horse, but you'll be inadvertently pushing with your leg and telling it to make a sharp turn, right? So how do you control a horse when you do that? When you jump a horse, your legs fly up behind you and actually sometimes will clear the hips of the horse when you're in the air. If you look at pictures of people jumping horses.
Oh wow!
Pegasus is in a negative G dive, right? And
yeah.
your legs are flying up behind you. How do you control it then, right? So we had to build these saddles, we didn't build it. We had to design these saddles that would work for mounted combat. And in order to do that, there's an equestrian center right across the street from my house. So it's fantastic. We got to go there and watch people jumping horses, right? And I got to play around with these gigantic, 16 and a half hand monster horses.
Those are big horses.
Oh, great, right? And look at the way that saddles worked, and look at English saddles and jumping saddles and all these. So, and then after that, then it comes to sitting down with the local veterinarian who works on the horses, and he's also my vet, and sitting down with him, and again, beer and wings, and hey, and a couple of books, books on avian biology and books on horse biology, and I was like, okay, let's make this work, man. I've still got the sketches for the thing, so that actually work. It took weeks, right? But that's how we do it.
That is super cool.
Yeah,
those were like really good questions too, of things to think about. And I've watched a lot of horseback riding before, but I guess I never really, because you're watching at regular speed, right? And so when it gets slowed down, you can actually see what is happening there. And I did not know that when people are jumping horses, that's actually happening to them. So
your legs fly way behind you. And so building out the saddles. So the saddles, I can talk this for hours and I won't, but so the saddles, because the horses are going to have a whole bunch of different moving parts on them that other horses don't. So they have these huge knots of muscle where the wings come out and all these things, right? And so the belts are going to be rubbing on the horses in different places. And when that happens, you get abscesses, you get tack gall, you get all of these problems. So by building out the horses, I had to build basically our research and development facility into a castle that was staffed with these like wizard veterinarians. But that was the basis of a lot of their military medicine, because the salves they had to build for the horses turned out to work really well on humans, and around and around and around. So built out this whole section of their army that started with figuring out how to put a knight on the back of a winged horse. And huge chunk of the world building, huge chunk of their military capability came from just solving that one problem. So,
speaking of wizardly veterinarians, we had an author a few weeks ago, G. Scott Huggins, actually, that was his name. And his book that he was just coming out with was literally about a veterinarian to somebody. Like there was a powerful person, a wizard or something. The character that was a veterinarian who took care of all these fantastic books. And it was like, you need to. I should just send you the link to that afterwards.
Please do. Actually, I would love to read that. That's right up my alley. That's the kind of stuff that I love that kind of stuff. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
weird little nerdy pieces of fact that get woven into the narrative just make me really happy. Yeah.
So this is the point in time where we do the drawing, and I give folks a little bit of time here. So now is the time. Put your name into the comments right now, you guys, if you would like to be added to the list of people. And in just a few minutes here, we will do a live drawing for a free copy of, is it Dragon's Trail that we're doing today? Dragon's Trail is the first book, right?
Yeah, Dragon's Trail is the first book. Actually, you know what? Let's do a drawing for the New Magic, which is book 2, which stands alone very well by all reviews. And also the extra material that I have is there's a bonus scene that we originally gave to people who pre-ordered the paperback.
Okay.
So that bonus scene is not in the paperback. So we'll do that.
Okay, I see William, Jack, Newt. I see you guys. Let me add you to the list here. That's awesome. So a bonus scene and a copy of the second book, which is The New Magic.
The New Magic. If you remember when the wizard was talking to them about the new magic, the new magic is technology. So in the second book, more and more where stuff gets introduced into the way that they do things. And put in a plug for Lagavulin real quick, or are we in a? Here we go. That's it.
You are in your home, sir.
I am indeed. So
you can manage yourself. I just request that we are polite-ish here.
Oh no! I just wanted to put that in the in your YouTube thing. I'm really hoping that they could sponsor me or something.
And Holly, the product placement. Holly,
yeah, do that. That's it.
Have Holly, okay, and yeah, right. that's kind of like what I do when I'm like, oh, and yep.
Right. That's exactly what it is. There it is.
Okay. With that said, I think I don't see any more names coming through, so we will get you guys. You are added to the list. I'm going to count down from 3, 2, 1. Okay, now here we go. Let me grab my screen share. And here is our list. We will submit this. And
that's cool. Oh, that's neat.
It's fun, huh?
That many people watching this? Are you serious? Wow, that's fantastic.
There we go. That is our winner for today, Sherilyn Barnes. Congratulations. You are the winner, and I will get you in contact with that person after the show today.
Awesome.
Yes, no. So before we let you go, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience?
Thank you all for being here. That was stunning just seeing that many names on the thing. Those are just the people who wow.
No, the people that are on our Patreon, so all of our Patreon members, and then plus the people in the comments that put their name into the comments for me.
That's really great. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being here and listening to me and putting up with me.
Well, so all of your links and information are on the low bar, and they've been going on the ticker the whole time, but people can find them even after the show because these videos don't come down. So all of that information is there. They can just click on the website, buy your stuff there. And I saw that you have it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Every major retailer. You can get the hard copies in both. Excuse me, again. Wow, this is terrible.
I know, this book is really bad.
Let's see. So you can get hardcover and paperback through IndieBound at your local independent bookstore.
Okay, cool.
And also the audiobook is out on Audible. It was done by Tantor Audio, and they did a phenomenal job.
Nice.
So, yeah. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are on Friday, which means our next show here will actually be, yeah, I know, right? Yay for the weekend. Sunday, we will be back with you guys for handmade home shopping. We have a pretty full lineup this week, and so we're looking forward to that. And I think with that said, that is all we have. Hit the like and subscribe button, you guys. It helps everybody. And if you buy one of Joseph's books, please leave a review. Please
leave a review. Thank you. Yes. That would be neat. That would be really neat. So, yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. Have a good night, and we'll see you all later. Bye-bye.
All right. See you later. Bye.